The emergency room at Naval Medical Center Portsmouth buzzed with controlled chaos. Dr. Marcus Rivera, a former Navy SEAL turned trauma surgeon, moved between patients with practiced efficiency. His hands, once trained to handle weapons and explosives, now saved lives with surgical precision. The transition from battlefield to hospital had been difficult, but Marcus found purpose in healing rather than fighting. Sarah Chen sat quietly in the corner bed, her left arm cradled against her chest. She had arrived 30 minutes earlier with what appeared to be a simple dislocated shoulder from a climbing accident. The intake nurse noted her calm demeanor, unusual for someone in obvious pain. Most patients with similar injuries would be asking for pain medication, but Sarah simply sat there, staring at the white hospital wall with unfocused eyes. Marcus approached her bed, clipboard in hand. Something about her posture caught his attention immediately. She sat with perfect military bearing despite her injury, shoulders squared and back straight. Her breathing was controlled, measured. These were subtle signs that most doctors might miss, but Marcus had seen them countless times before in fellow service members. "Ms. Chen, I'm Dr. Rivera. I understand you had a climbing accident today?" Marcus pulled up a chair, noting how her eyes quickly assessed him from head to toe. It was a tactical evaluation, not a medical patient's nervous glance. Her gaze lingered on his hands, probably noting the small scars that marked years of military service. "Yes, sir. Simple fall. Just need the shoulder popped back in place," Sarah replied. Her voice was steady, professional. She avoided eye contact, focusing instead on a point just over his left shoulder. Marcus recognized this behavior too. It was how soldiers reported injuries to medical personnel, minimizing symptoms to avoid being pulled from duty. As Marcus began his examination, he noticed more details that didn't fit the story. Her clothes were clean and showed no signs of dirt or rock dust that would be expected from a climbing fall. Her hands were calloused in specific patterns that suggested weapons training rather than rock climbing. Most telling were the small faded scars on her knuckles and forearms that spoke of combat training and possibly real combat experience. The X-rays confirmed a posterior shoulder dislocation, but Marcus found himself studying the images more carefully than usual. Previous fractures in her ribs had healed with slight irregularities, suggesting they had been treated in field conditions rather than proper medical facilities. A small metallic fragment was visible in her upper thigh, likely shrapnel that had been left in place because removal would have been more dangerous than leaving it. When Marcus returned to her bedside with the X-ray results, Sarah was exactly as he had left her. She hadn't moved, hadn't adjusted her position for comfort, hadn't even reached for the water cup on the bedside table. Her eyes tracked his movement with the same precision he had seen in fellow SEALs during briefings. "The dislocation is straightforward, but I noticed some old injuries on your X-rays. Have you had previous trauma to your ribs and leg?" Marcus asked carefully, watching her reaction. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Her breathing remained steady, but Marcus caught the slight dilation of her pupils that indicated stress. "Car accident a few years back," she answered quickly, too quickly. The response was practiced, rehearsed. Marcus had heard similar lies from soldiers trying to hide combat injuries from family members or civilian doctors who wouldn't understand the real circumstances. As Marcus prepared to reduce the dislocation, he explained the procedure. Sarah listened with the attention of someone accustomed to receiving medical briefings in dangerous situations. When he warned her about potential pain, she simply nodded once. No questions about pain medication, no request for someone to hold her hand, no anxiety about the procedure itself. The reduction went smoothly. Sarah's only reaction to what should have been significant pain was a slight tightening around her eyes. Marcus had seen this level of pain tolerance only in combat veterans, who had learned to push through injuries that would incapacitate most people. As he secured her arm in a sling, he made a decision that would change both their lives. "Ms. Chen, I'd like to keep you for observation for a few hours. Sometimes these injuries can have complications that don't show up immediately," Marcus said. It wasn't entirely true, but something about Sarah's situation troubled him. The inconsistencies in her story, her military bearing, and the evidence of old combat injuries suggested someone who might need help, but was too trained in silence to ask for it. Sarah's eyes met his for the first time since he had begun treating her. In that brief moment, Marcus saw something that confirmed his suspicions. Behind her controlled exterior was the look he had seen in too many fellow warriors, the expression of someone carrying wounds that went far deeper than physical injuries. She was a soldier, and she was fighting a battle that no one else could see. Marcus returned to check on Sarah 2 hours later. She hadn't moved from her original position, and the untouched lunch tray beside her bed told him everything he needed to know. Most patients would have at least attempted to eat or drink something, but Sarah maintained her vigilant stillness like someone on watch duty. "How's the pain level?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside her bed. He kept his voice gentle but professional, the same tone he had used with wounded teammates who were reluctant to admit their suffering. "Manageable," Sarah replied. The single-word response was another military habit. Marcus remembered his own tendency to minimize everything when he was active duty. Pain was manageable, injuries were minor, problems were handled. It was the warrior's code of never showing weakness. Marcus pulled out his tablet and pretended to review her chart, while actually observing her more closely. Sarah's eyes constantly scanned the room, noting the positions of the exits, the locations of potential threats, and the movements of hospital staff. Her uninjured hand rested in a position where she could quickly defend herself if needed. These weren't the behaviors of a civilian rock climber. "I've been rock climbing for 15 years, Marcus said casually, watching for her reaction. "Started when I was stationed in Colorado. What's your favorite climbing area?" It was a test. If Sarah was really an experienced climber, she would have opinions about routes, equipment, or climbing destinations. Sarah's hesitation was brief but noticeable. "I mostly climb indoors," she said finally. "Safer that way." Another evasion, and one that didn't match the calluses on her hands. Those were from rope work, but not the kind used in recreational climbing. They were from tactical rappelling and fast roping operations. A commotion in the hallway caught both their attention. Sarah's reaction was immediate and telling. Her body tensed. Her head turned toward the sound, and her uninjured hand moved instinctively toward her waist where a sidearm would normally be holstered. The movement was so automatic that Marcus knew she had worn a weapon as part of her daily routine for years. "Old habits," Sarah muttered, realizing Marcus had noticed her reaction. For the first time, her carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. She looked down at her hands, and Marcus saw something vulnerable in her expression that she quickly suppressed. "I know about old habits," Marcus said quietly. "Sometimes they're the only things that keep us alive." He let the words hang in the air between them, an invitation for her to open up without directly asking her to reveal anything she wasn't ready to share. Sarah looked at him more carefully then, really studying his face for the first time. Marcus could see her processing information, noting details she had missed during her initial assessment. The way he carried himself, the alertness in his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow from an old training accident. Recognition dawned slowly in her expression. "You served," she said. It wasn't a question. Sarah's voice carried a note of relief, as if she had finally found someone who might understand her world. "Navy, Special Operations, 8 years active duty before I went to medical school," Marcus confirmed. He watched Sarah's shoulders relax slightly, the first time he had seen her truly let her guard down since she arrived. "Where?" Sarah asked. The question carried weight beyond simple curiosity. She was asking about deployments, about whether Marcus had seen real combat, about whether he was someone who would understand what she had been through. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, some other places that aren't on the official record. Marcus answered honestly. Sarah nodded slowly, and Marcus could see her making connections, understanding why he had seen through her cover story so easily. "The climbing accident," Marcus said gently. "Want to tell me what really happened?" He kept his voice free of judgment, the same tone he would use with a fellow operator who needed medical attention, but was reluctant to admit weakness. Sarah was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I haven't been climbing in 3 years. I can't handle the heights anymore. The open spaces. Makes me feel too exposed." The admission cost her. Marcus could see the shame in her expression, the self-recrimination of a warrior who felt she had lost something essential about herself. He recognized the signs because he had struggled with similar feelings during his own transition to civilian life. "The shoulder?" Marcus prompted gently. "Panic attack. At the grocery store." Hit the floor pretty hard when I went down. Sarah's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the humiliation underneath. Made up the climbing story because it seemed better than admitting I can't handle being around too many people anymore. Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest. He had seen too many good soldiers struggling with invisible wounds, fighting battles that never made the news and carrying pain that no one else could see. Sarah was clearly dealing with post-traumatic stress, but she was facing it alone and trying to maintain the silence that had been drilled into her during her service. "What branch?" Marcus asked. Sarah hesitated again, and Marcus understood why. Women in special operations faced additional challenges and scrutiny that made them even more reluctant to seek help. "Army. Special Operations Support Activity," Sarah said finally. Marcus whistled softly. SOSA was highly classified, populated by some of the most elite and secretive operators in the military. Sarah hadn't just served. She had been part of operations that most people would never know existed. The weight of Sarah's revelation settled between them like a shared secret. Marcus understood now why she carried herself with such precise control, and why her eyes never stopped scanning for threats. SOSA operators were ghosts in the military world, conducting missions that officially never happened, and carrying secrets that could never be shared. "How long have you been out?" Marcus asked carefully. He had learned that timing mattered when dealing with veterans struggling with transition. Some people adjusted quickly to civilian life, while others found the contrast between their military and civilian worlds too jarring to navigate easily. 18 months, Sarah answered. Medical discharge. The way she said it told Marcus everything about how that discharge had affected her sense of identity. For special operations personnel, medical discharge often felt like failure even when injuries were sustained in the line of duty. Marcus nodded, understanding. "The shrapnel in your leg, that what got you pulled out?" He had seen the metallic fragment on her x-ray and knew that such injuries often came with complications that weren't immediately apparent. Sarah's jaw tightened. "ID convoy hit outside Kandahar. Lost 2 good people that day." Her voice remained steady, but Marcus caught the slight tremor in her hands that indicated she was reliving the memory. "Shrapnel tore up my leg pretty bad, but the real damage was to my hearing. Blast left me with tinnitus and partial hearing loss. Can't do the job if you can't hear threats coming." The clinical way she described her injuries was typical of special operations personnel. They were trained to compartmentalize trauma, to treat their own bodies as equipment that sometimes malfunctioned, rather than acknowledging the emotional impact of their wounds. "The panic attack started about 6 months after I got out," Sarah continued, surprising Marcus with her openness. "First one hit me at a coffee shop. Too many people, too much noise, too many exits to watch. I ended up hiding in the bathroom for 2 hours before I could function again." Marcus recognized the symptoms she was describing. Many combat veterans struggled with hypervigilance and anxiety when transitioning to civilian environments. The skills that kept them alive in war zones became overwhelming burdens in peaceful settings. "Are you getting any help?" Marcus asked. He knew that many veterans, especially those from special operations units, were reluctant to seek mental health support due to concerns about their security clearances and future employment prospects. Sarah shook her head. "Can't risk it. My clearance is still active for consulting work. Any mental health treatment goes on my record, and then I lose the only job prospects I have." It was a common dilemma for veterans with high-level security clearances. The very system designed to protect national security often prevented veterans from getting the help they needed. Marcus felt a familiar frustration. During his own transition, he had been fortunate to have family support and the structure of medical school to help him redirect his sense of purpose. Not everyone was so lucky, and the system often failed those who had sacrificed the most. "The grocery store incident," Marcus said gently. "What triggered it?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "It was the shopping carts. Sounds stupid, but they reminded me of the sound our equipment made when we were moving through villages. Metal rattling against metal. I know it's not rational, but my brain doesn't care about rational anymore." "It's not stupid," Marcus said firmly. "Your brain is trying to protect you based on experiences that taught you certain sounds meant danger. The fact that you're in a safe environment doesn't automatically turn off those protective responses." For the first time since he had started treating her, Sarah made direct eye contact with Marcus. He could see the relief in her expression at being understood rather than judged. Too many veterans suffered in silence because they felt their struggles would be dismissed or misunderstood by people who hadn't shared their experiences. The isolation is the worst part, Sarah admitted. I can't relate to civilian friends anymore. They worry about things like traffic jams and work deadlines, and I'm thinking about improvised explosive devices and escape routes. I feel like I'm from a different planet. Marcus understood completely. The gap between military and civilian experiences could feel insurmountable, especially for those who had served in highly classified units where their experiences couldn't be shared or discussed openly. Have you considered reaching out to other veterans? Marcus asked. There are support groups that understand the unique challenges faced by special operations personnel. Sarah's expression darkened. Tried one group. Bunch of guys who spent the whole time comparing war stories and trying to one-up each other. Not exactly helpful for someone who can't talk about most of what she did. The gender dynamic added another layer of complexity to Sarah's situation. Women in special operations faced unique challenges and often found it difficult to connect with support systems designed primarily for male veterans. What about family? Marcus asked carefully. Parents think I should just be grateful to be alive and move on. They don't understand why I can't just get a normal job and settle down. My sister keeps suggesting I try yoga and meditation. Sarah's voice carried years of accumulated frustration with well-meaning but unhelpful advice. Marcus recognized the family dynamics that many veterans faced. Loved ones often struggled to understand why someone who had been so capable and confident in the military couldn't seem to adjust to civilian life. Marcus made a decision that went beyond his medical duties. Something about Sarah's situation resonated with his own struggles during transition, and he couldn't simply discharge her back into the isolation she had been enduring. As a physician, he was bound to treat her physical injuries, but as a fellow veteran, he felt obligated to address the deeper wounds she carried. I want to share something with you, Marcus said, settling back in his chair. When I first got out, I thought medical school would be the perfect transition. Structured environment, clear objectives, measurable progress. I figured if I could master complex surgical procedures, I could handle anything civilian life threw at me. Sarah listened intently, recognizing that Marcus was offering her something personal, rather than professional advice. 6 months into my residency, I had a complete breakdown during a trauma surgery. The patient had been hit by an IED while deployed, and suddenly I was back in that field hospital in Afghanistan, watching my buddy die on an operating table while mortars fell outside. I froze completely. Other residents had to take over the surgery. The admission clearly surprised Sarah. Marcus carried himself with such confidence and competence that it was difficult to imagine him struggling with anything. What happened? Sarah asked quietly. I almost quit medicine completely. Felt like a failure. Like I was weak for not being able to handle the pressure. My supervising physician, Dr. Catherine Walsh, was a former Air Force flight surgeon. She recognized what was happening and probably saved my career. Marcus paused, remembering that difficult period in his life. Dr. Walsh told me something that changed my perspective. She said that the skills that made us effective in combat don't automatically translate to civilian life, but they don't have to be abandoned either. They need to be adapted and redirected. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding the concept but struggling to see how it applied to her own situation. She helped me understand that my hypervigilance and tactical thinking could be assets in emergency medicine if I learned to channel them properly. Instead of seeing every trauma case as a combat situation, I learned to use my ability to stay calm under pressure and make quick decisions to save lives. But you had a clear path forward, Sarah pointed out. Medicine gave you a way to use your skills. I was a shooter and a linguist. Not exactly high-demand skills in the civilian world. Marcus smiled. You'd be surprised. Your language skills alone open up opportunities in government contracting, international business, and security consulting. Your tactical training translates to risk assessment, crisis management, and security planning. The problem isn't that you don't have valuable skills. The problem is that you're trying to fit into jobs that don't utilize what makes you exceptional. For the first time since their conversation began, Sarah looked genuinely interested rather than simply polite. Marcus could see her mind working, considering possibilities she hadn't previously explored. Dr. Walsh introduced me to a network of veteran healthcare providers, Marcus continued, people who understood the unique challenges we face and could provide support without judgment. It made all the difference in my recovery. Are you suggesting I need therapy? Sarah asked, her defensive walls rising slightly. I'm suggesting you need community, Marcus clarified. People who understand what you've been through and can help you navigate the transition without compromising your security clearance or your sense of identity. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. There's a woman I want you to meet, Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She's a psychologist who specializes in working with special operations veterans, former CIA officer herself, so she understands the clearance issues and the classification constraints. Sarah's interest was clearly piqued. She takes clients with active clearances? She has the clearance level to work with people in your situation. More importantly, she understands the specific challenges faced by women in special operations. She won't try to fix you because she doesn't think you're broken. She'll help you adapt your skills to your new environment. Marcus could see Sarah processing this information, weighing the potential benefits against the risks of reaching out for help. I also want to introduce you to someone else, Marcus continued. Jennifer Liu. Former Army intelligence, now runs a consulting firm that provides security assessments for international corporations. She's built a business around the exact skills you developed in SOSA. You know a lot of veterans, Sarah observed. Dr. Walsh connected me with a whole network. We look out for each other, share opportunities, provide support when needed. It's like having a unit again, but one that's focused on thriving in civilian life rather than just surviving it. Sarah was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing Marcus's suggestions. What's the catch? She asked finally. No catch. Just veterans helping veterans. The only requirement is that when you get back on your feet, you help the next person who needs it. And if I'm not ready for that level of connection? Sarah asked. Then we start smaller, Marcus said. I have a standing offer for coffee with any veteran who needs someone to talk to. No agenda, no pressure, just conversation with someone who gets it. Sarah looked at Marcus carefully as if trying to determine whether his offer was genuine or simply professional courtesy. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I could be anyone. Because 18 months ago I was where you are now, Marcus answered honestly. Isolated, struggling, and too proud to admit I needed help. If Dr. Walsh hadn't reached out to me, I might not have made it through my residency. Sometimes we all need someone to throw us a lifeline. The vulnerability in Marcus's admission seemed to reach Sarah in a way that his professional expertise hadn't. For the first time since he had started treating her, Marcus saw her carefully constructed defenses begin to lower. 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself sitting in a small coffee shop near the hospital, waiting for Marcus to arrive. She had chosen a table in the corner with clear sight lines to all entrances, a habit she couldn't break even in safe environments. The familiar weight of hypervigilance pressed on her shoulders, but for the first time in months, it felt manageable rather than overwhelming. Marcus arrived precisely on time, carrying 2 coffee cups and a genuine smile. I got you a black coffee, he said, setting 1 cup in front of her. Figured someone with your background probably drinks it straight. Sarah smiled slightly. Good assumption. Sugar and cream are luxuries when you're living on MREs and whatever the local vendors are selling. How's the shoulder? Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from her. Better. Physical therapy is helping, though the therapist keeps asking about my pain tolerance. I think I'm frustrating him by not complaining enough. Sarah rolled her shoulder experimentally. He doesn't understand that this barely registers compared to some of the things I've dealt with. Marcus nodded, understanding. Civilian medical providers sometimes struggle with treating veterans. They're used to patients who express pain more openly. Speaking of medical providers, Sarah said carefully, I called Dr. Rodriguez. We have an appointment next week. Marcus felt a surge of relief. Getting Sarah to reach out for professional help had been his primary concern since their first meeting. How do you feel about it? Nervous, Sarah admitted. It's been a long time since I've talked to anyone about what I've been going through. Part of me thinks I should be able to handle this on my own. That's the special operations mindset talking, Marcus said gently. We're trained to be self-sufficient and to solve problems independently. But some problems require different tools than the ones we developed in the military. Sarah sipped her coffee thoughtfully. I've been thinking about what you said regarding adapting skills rather than abandoning them. I started looking into consulting opportunities, and you were right. There are more options than I realized. Find anything interesting? Jennifer Liu's firm is looking for someone with my language skills and regional experience. They need someone who can assess security risks for companies operating in Central Asia. Sarah's voice carried a note of excitement that Marcus hadn't heard before. It would actually use my expertise rather than requiring me to pretend it doesn't exist. Marcus smiled broadly. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd find. Work that values your experience rather than seeing it as a liability. There's something else, Sarah said, her voice becoming more serious. I've been having fewer panic attacks since we talked. I think knowing that someone understands what I'm going through has helped more than I expected. Community matters, Marcus said. Isolation amplifies problems that become more manageable when shared with people who understand them. Sarah nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. I want to ask you something, but I'm not sure how to phrase it without sounding weak. You couldn't sound weak if you tried, Marcus said firmly. What's on your mind? Do you ever feel guilty about being okay? Sarah asked quietly. I lost friends in that convoy attack. Good people who deserve to make it home more than I did. Sometimes I feel like I don't have the right to be happy or successful when they're gone. Marcus felt a familiar ache in his chest. Survivor's guilt was a common struggle among combat veterans, especially those who had lost close friends or team members. Every day, he answered honestly. I lost 3 teammates in my last deployment. All of them had families, kids, plans for after they got out. Some days I wonder why I survived when they didn't. How do you deal with it? Dr. Walsh helped me understand that survivor's guilt is a way of honoring the people we lost, but it becomes destructive when it prevents us from living meaningful lives, Marcus explained. She told me that the best way to honor fallen teammates is to make our survival count for something. Sarah absorbed this perspective quietly. Is that why you became a doctor? To make your survival meaningful? Partly, but also because healing people gives me a sense of purpose that's similar to what I felt serving my country. It's a different kind of mission, but it still feels like I'm making a difference. I've been thinking about that too, Sarah said. The consulting work Jennifer mentioned would involve helping protect civilians in dangerous areas. It's not exactly the same as what I did in the Army, but it serves a similar purpose. Marcus could see that Sarah was beginning to envision a future that honored her military experience while allowing her to build a meaningful civilian life. It was a crucial step in the healing process. There's something I want to propose, Marcus said carefully. Dr. Walsh and I have been talking about starting a support group specifically for special operations veterans. Informal meetings, no official records, just a safe space for people with similar experiences to connect. Sarah's interest was immediate. How many people are you thinking? Small group, maybe 6 to 8 people initially. Mix of different specialties and backgrounds, but all special operations. The idea would be to create the kind of unit cohesion we had in the military, but focused on civilian success rather than combat missions. Would Jennifer Liu be involved? She's already expressed interest. So has Dr. Rodriguez, though she'd participate as a facilitator rather than a patient. We're looking for people who understand the unique challenges of transitioning from highly classified work to civilian life. Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering the proposal. What would these meetings look like? Honestly, we're still figuring that out. Probably monthly gatherings, maybe rotating locations to keep things informal. The goal would be mutual support, networking, and sharing strategies for civilian success. No therapy, no formal treatment, just veterans helping veterans. I'm interested, Sarah said after a pause, but I want to try the individual sessions with Dr. Rodriguez first. I need to work through some personal issues before I'm ready to be part of a group. Marcus felt a surge of pride at Sarah's thoughtful approach to her recovery. She was taking control of her healing process while remaining open to support from others. 3 months after their first meeting, Marcus received a text message from Sarah that made him smile broadly. Got the job with Jennifer's firm. Start Monday. Thanks for the lifeline. Attached was a photo of Sarah standing in front of a modern office building, wearing business attire but still maintaining the confident posture that had first caught his attention in the emergency room. Marcus immediately called her, unable to contain his excitement. Congratulations. How do you feel about starting? Nervous, but good nervous. Sarah's voice carried an energy that Marcus hadn't heard during their earlier conversations. Jennifer says my first assignment will be assessing security protocols for a manufacturing facility in Kazakhstan. I'll actually get to use my language skills and my understanding of regional politics. That's fantastic. It sounds like exactly the kind of work that will challenge you in positive ways. The best part is that my military experience is seen as an asset rather than something I need to downplay or hide, Sarah continued. During the interview, Jennifer specifically asked about my tactical training and my experience with threat assessment. It felt incredible to be valued for skills I thought I'd never use again. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction at hearing the confidence in Sarah's voice. The transformation from the isolated, struggling veteran he had met in the emergency room to the engaged professional he was speaking with now represented exactly the kind of successful transition he hoped to facilitate for other veterans. How are things going with Dr. Rodriguez? Marcus asked. Really well. You were right about her understanding the unique challenges. She's helping me develop coping strategies that work with my personality, rather than trying to change who I am fundamentally. Sarah paused. She also thinks I'm ready to consider joining your support group. Marcus felt a surge of excitement. The support group had been meeting for 2 months now, and the results had exceeded his expectations. The 6 current members had formed genuine connections and were actively helping each other navigate various challenges of civilian life. We'd love to have you join us. The group has really gelled, and I think you'd find the perspectives valuable. We have people from different branches and specialties, but everyone understands the adjustment process. What are the meetings like? Sarah asked. Informal. We usually meet at members' homes or in private dining rooms at restaurants. Last month we met at Jennifer's house and spent the evening brainstorming business ideas for one of our members who wants to start his own security consulting firm. Marcus smiled, remembering the enthusiasm and creativity that had emerged during that discussion. The dynamic is really interesting. We function like a military unit in some ways, with everyone looking out for each other and contributing their expertise. But the mission is building successful civilian lives rather than completing combat operations. That sounds like exactly what I need, Sarah said. I miss having teammates who understand my background and can provide perspective on challenges. There's actually something specific I wanted to discuss with you, Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious. One of our members, David Kim, is struggling with some issues that are similar to what you went through. Former Marine Force recon, discharged after an injury dealing with panic attacks and isolation. Sarah immediately understood what Marcus was suggesting. You want me to mentor him? Not formally, but your experience with panic attacks and your recent success in finding meaningful work might provide him with hope and practical strategies. Sometimes hearing from someone who has walked the same path is more powerful than advice from professionals. I'd be happy to help, Sarah said without hesitation. Dr. Rodriguez has been encouraging me to find ways to use my experience to help others. She says it's part of finding meaning in what I went through. Marcus felt a familiar warmth at Sarah's immediate willingness to help a fellow veteran. It was the same instinct that had made her effective in special operations, redirected toward building others up, rather than protecting them from physical threats. The next meeting is this Saturday evening. Jennifer is hosting again, and she's planning to discuss some new contract opportunities that might be relevant for multiple group members. I'll be there, Sarah said firmly. And Marcus, I wanted you to know that reaching out to me that day in the hospital probably saved my life. I was in a much darker place than I let on, and I'm not sure I would have made it through without the connections you helped me make. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. As a physician, he saved lives regularly through medical intervention, but helping Sarah rebuild her life felt equally significant and more personally meaningful. You did the hard work, Marcus replied. I just pointed you toward resources that were already available. Your recovery is a testament to your own strength and determination. Maybe, but sometimes strength isn't enough on its own. Sometimes we need people who understand us to help us remember what we're capable of achieving. After ending the call, Marcus sat in his office reflecting on Sarah's transformation. The support network that had begun with Dr. Walsh's intervention in his own life was now growing and helping other veterans find their way forward. Each person who successfully transitioned seemed to strengthen the entire network, creating a positive cycle that benefited everyone involved. Marcus thought about David Kim, who would meet Sarah for the first time on Saturday. David was currently where Sarah had been 3 months earlier, struggling with invisible wounds and feeling disconnected from civilian life. Marcus hoped that seeing Sarah's success would provide David with the hope and motivation he needed to begin his own healing journey. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Dr. Walsh. calling to check on the support group's progress and to discuss expanding the program to other military medical centers. As Marcus updated her on recent developments, including Sarah's successful job placement and her willingness to mentor other veterans, he felt grateful for the network of support that continued to grow and evolve. 1 year after their first meeting in the emergency room, Marcus stood at the podium of a conference room at Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth, looking out at an audience of military medical personnel. Veteran advocates and special operations veterans. Sarah sat in the front row, wearing a sharp business suit and the confident expression of someone who had found her place in the world. The Warrior Transition Support Network began with a simple recognition, Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Veterans transitioning from special operations face unique challenges that traditional support systems often fail to address. Today I want to share the story of how one chance encounter in an emergency room led to a program that has helped dozens of veterans find meaningful paths forward. Marcus caught Sarah's eye and saw her slight nod of encouragement. Behind her sat the other founding members of their support group, all of whom had become advocates for expanding the program to other military medical centers across the country. 18 months ago, a patient came to my emergency room with what appeared to be a simple shoulder injury from a climbing accident. Marcus continued. Within minutes I recognized signs that suggested a different story entirely. Her military bearing, pain tolerance, and tactical awareness indicated someone with extensive combat experience who was struggling to adapt to civilian life. In the audience, Dr. Rodriguez took notes as Marcus described the initial assessment and intervention strategies that had proven successful with Sarah and subsequent group members. The formal presentation was part of a proposal to establish similar programs at military medical centers nationwide. The key insight was recognizing that the skills that make special operations personnel effective in combat don't disappear upon discharge. They need to be adapted and redirected rather than suppressed or ignored, Marcus explained. Sarah Chen, who is here with us today, exemplifies this approach. Sarah stood and walked to the podium, her movement confident and purposeful. The transformation from the isolated, struggling veteran Marcus had first met to the successful professional and advocate standing before them was remarkable. When Dr. Rivera first approached me about my military background, I was terrified, Sarah began, her voice clear and strong. I had been hiding my service history, lying about my injuries and isolating myself from everyone who might ask questions I couldn't answer. I thought admitting I was struggling meant admitting I was weak. The audience listened intently as Sarah described her journey from that low point to her current success. Her honesty about panic attacks, survivor's guilt, and the challenges of transitioning from classified work resonated with many of the veterans in attendance. The support network Dr. Rivera introduced me to didn't try to fix me because I wasn't broken. Instead, they helped me understand how to use my military skills in civilian contexts. Today I run my own security consulting firm, employing 5 other special operations veterans. We provide risk assessments and security planning for international corporations operating in high-threat environments. Sarah paused, looking directly at several veterans in the audience who showed signs of the same struggles she had experienced. More importantly, I've learned that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a tactical decision. When you're facing a challenge that requires resources you don't currently possess, you call for backup. That's exactly what civilian transition requires. The presentation continued with testimonials from other group members, data on successful job placements and metrics showing reduced isolation and improved mental health outcomes among participants. Dr. Walsh, who had traveled from her current assignment in San Diego, provided clinical perspective on the program's effectiveness. During the question and answer session, a young Marine recently discharged after losing his leg in a training accident asked how the program addressed physical disabilities alongside mental health challenges. Marcus looked to Sarah, who stepped forward to answer. Physical injuries often come with identity challenges that are just as significant as the medical issues, Sarah said. In our group, we have members dealing with various injuries and disabilities. We focus on adapting to new capabilities rather than mourning lost ones. My hearing loss ended my military career, but it led me to develop other skills that made me successful in the business world. A Navy psychiatrist asked about the program's relationship with traditional mental health services. Dr. Rodriguez responded, explaining how the peer support network complemented rather than replaced professional treatment. The support group provides community and practical assistance with civilian transition, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Professional therapy addresses clinical issues like PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Both are necessary, and they work synergistically when properly coordinated. As the formal presentation concluded, Marcus felt a deep sense of accomplishment. What had begun as an instinctive response to one veteran's suffering had evolved into a systematic approach to helping special operations personnel transition successfully to civilian life. During the networking break that followed, Sarah approached Marcus with a broad smile. "I have news," she said. "The Department of Defense wants to fund a pilot program based on our model. They're looking at implementing it at 10 military medical centers over the next 2 years. Marcus felt a surge of excitement mixed with the weight of responsibility. Expanding the program meant the opportunity to help hundreds of additional veterans, but it also meant maintaining the quality and personal touch that had made their local group so effective. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "They want you to lead the implementation. It would mean taking a leave of absence from clinical practice, but you'd be developing training protocols and establishing programs nationwide." Marcus looked around the room at the veterans who had gathered to learn about their approach. Many showed the same signs he had recognized in Sarah that day in the emergency room: the careful posture, watchful eyes, and controlled demeanor of warriors struggling to find their place in a peaceful world. "What do you think?" Marcus asked Sarah. "I think Dr. Walsh was right when she told you that your military skills could be adapted to serve a different mission," Sarah replied. "You've already proven that your ability to recognize and respond to tactical situations translates perfectly to identifying veterans in crisis and connecting them with appropriate resources." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding that Sarah was offering him the same kind of perspective and encouragement that he had provided to her a year earlier. The cycle of veterans helping veterans continued, each success creating opportunities to reach more people who needed support. "David Kim wants to establish a West Coast chapter," Sarah added. "Jennifer Liu is interested in developing corporate partnerships to create more job opportunities. The network is growing organically, and people are finding ways to contribute their unique strengths to help others." Marcus smiled, remembering his initial hope that helping Sarah might create a ripple effect of positive change. That hope had exceeded his wildest expectations, evolving into a formal program with national implications and the potential to transform how the military medical system addressed veteran transition challenges. As veterans and medical personnel continued networking around them, Marcus realized that the small intervention he had made in an emergency room had grown into something much larger than individual healing. It had become a demonstration that the warrior ethos of never leaving anyone behind could be successfully adapted to civilian life, creating communities of mutual support that honored military service while embracing new missions and purposes.